Welcome, everybody, to the Liturgy, the Chalice. I'm so excited that you're here today. And also, thank you to everybody that will be listening to this after the fact online. Today's talk is about reincarnation. And I have to tell you, I did a Google search about reincarnation plus Christianity. And you'll see some things that say like reincarnation versus plus whatever gospel or whatever book from the Hebrew Testament. And then when you open it up, it's a bunch of modern Christians that believe in the one life only motif. And they have very aggressive stances that there's just this one life and you either go to heaven or hell. So get your act together. And although I would support the idea of getting my act together, because I do need to get my act together, I don't agree that it's one life and then you have eternal heaven or eternal hell. And the Jewish religion, it teaches reincarnation. In the Mishnah, it teaches reincarnation. Kabbalists know about reincarnation. And as we'll see today, reincarnation is all over the Christian Testament. It's quite blunt. So because Jesus was a Jew, he was definitely familiar with the idea of reincarnation. And there can be no doubt, just doing a direct reading of certain gospel verses, there's no doubt that Jesus taught reincarnation. The word for reincarnation in Hebrew is Gilgul. Gilgul, sometimes spelled the other way you see in the screen, means something that rolls. For example, a wheel. The wheel of life is birth, increasing, growing, maturation, decreasing, slowing down, death, a phase in the afterlife, whatever that may be, and then rebirth. Many Jewish people of the past and present believe in reincarnation. The idea of Gilgul or reincarnation was part of pre-Kabbalistic and Kabbalistic expectation. References throughout the Hebrew Testament refer to reincarnation plainly or subtly. For this presentation, we'll only focus on what the Christian Testament teaches about reincarnation. Yes, it does teach Gilgul plainly and quite directly. It's not even hidden, it's right there if you just read it. Yet, it is not part of modern Christianity teaching. And why do you think that is? Well, you have to remember that before there were Protestants, before there were evangelicals, there was just the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. And it's a money-making machine. The Vatican is a very rich place, still is today. If you want, I mean, just look at some of the doctrines as a sacrament of confession. You need to have that priest to forgive you of your sins. Otherwise, if you have sins, you're going to a very hot place. And there's a nice piece of brimstone sitting there waiting for you. Nobody can forgive your sins except for the person you hurt. And possibly God can give you some exemptions. But that was part of the power structure. You need me to consecrate the bread and wine so that you get the body and blood of Christ. This is modern Christianity, not our tradition. We do not believe in this tradition in transubstantiation, which means turning the bread into the body and turning the wine into the blood of Christ. It's not a thing. And we won't be discussing that here, but in other teachings and online, we have taught it. But the reason why there's one life and you live or you die is the power struggle. If you only have one chance to get it right, then you better show up to church. You better confess your sins. you better get there and get your bread and your wine, or else you're going to a fiery place. Even baseball gives you 3 strikes before you're out. So eliminating reincarnation from Christian and Jewish understanding is all about power. It's about controlling people. Why are souls thought to reincarnate? As we already learned, most souls after death require some level of purification or reflection. And this happens in a place called Gehenna. Most souls will not spend more than 1 year in Gehenna. So Gehenna in the Christian Testament is often, sometimes they say Gehenna, and other times they call it Hades, showing a Greek understanding, which proves that they don't even understand the Jewish context of what Gehenna was. And at other times they translate Gehenna as hell. But the original word is Gehenna. And Gehenna does not mean hell. It is a place of purification. The best parallel to draw between it and, say, Roman Catholicism would be purgatory. It's a place where you go and you are purified. You get a chance to reflect on the things you didn't get right. So spiritual beings who are not yet perfected or spiritually regenerated are thought to be allowed to experience the peace and joy of Pardes in the Garden of Eden after purification is completed in Gehenna, which, as we said, is a kind of purgatorial realm. So there are different worlds or spiritual spheres beyond this one that we are aware of in our waking consciousness. There are higher levels of realities, and they're called olamim. Olamim is plural and olam is singular. And often they'll translate it as heaven. So in the third heaven, that is where both Pardes and Gehenna exist. They exist on the same plane of being. So many souls, if not most souls, will need to go to Gehenna to purify and reflect on actions that weren't pure or mistakes that we made. And then after that purification is done, the soul will have a chance to experience Pardes, or the so-called Garden of Eden. And you experience peace and joy there, sometimes consciously, and sometimes beings will kind of go there and have a nice sleep or rest before they awaken in a new body, in a new life experience. After a period in the Pardes, that after that point is when reincarnation will take place on Earth, that the soul can continue its spiritual evolution. If you've not perfected yourself, illumined yourself, experienced spiritual rebirth as a Bar Anash, a son of man, anointed saint of the communion of saints. If you've not gotten that far, then you need to come back and continue where you left off until you do experience spiritual regeneration. Until a soul becomes perfect, they are obligated to reincarnate. However, it is possible that an illumined being can choose to be reborn on Earth for the benefit of humanity, for the upliftment of humanity, and also for the upliftment of specific souls. Perhaps a great saint had various disciples in another incarnation. They can come back for the benefit of those disciples to help move them forward. What is the experience of the Bar Anash after physical death? Again, Bar Anash means son of man. You see Jesus talking about the Son of Man throughout the Christian Testament. But really, unless you understood Hebrew and rolled back Son of Man to the original Hebrew, you you're not going to understand what it is. It seems like there's a son of man, that it's a singular concept. But really, the concept goes all the way back to the book of Daniel. And Daniel says that, from the clouds will be manifested this son of man. Something, the actual words are something that looks like a human. Something that has the context of human. And whenever you see the term Baranash in Aramaic, the Hebrew Aramaic, it actually means son of mankind. It's this product, the soul that is purified, and it's part of a new mankind. The current mankind that we're born into, called the old Adam, which means the old humanity. Adam means humanity. It's characterized by selfishness, spiritual ignorance, fear of God. And once we are purified through Mar Yeshua's teachings, halakha, this purifies us and awakens our soul in a different way. And within our heart, we realize the purified Baranash. We become a son of humanity, a daughter of humanity. In other words, you become a perfected being. So you can become an individual Baranash, an individual son or daughter of man, and you are also part of the heavenly Baranash, which is the communion of saints. And this is why sometimes when you read the Bible carefully, when you read the Christian Testament carefully, sometimes you'll see that Jesus seems to refer to himself as a son of man. And at other times, it's very clear that he's not talking about himself at all. For those that don't believe me, please read Mark and John again, carefully, with an unbiased eye. And you'll see that Jesus does not always refer to himself as the Son of Man. In other words, he's talking about the Son of Mankind, corporate Messiah, this anointed new humanity, this anointed second Adam that is meant to help guide the evolution of humanity and the earth. So what is the experience of this Baranash, an individual Baranash, after physical death? Once you've been spiritually reborn, once you've received illumination, a perfected, spiritually regenerated being does not necessitate purification in Gehenna. Such a thing can go direct to Pardes and beyond the eighth olam of the Enochian sea, which is called the Ogdoad, which is where the heavenly Baranash resides and continues to evolve there. Unlike the perfected soul, the individual Baranash, or perfected one, Sadiq, may retain the personality of his or her incarnation when perfection was attained. Such a perfect one can choose to stay in the Ogdoad and guide the spiritual evolution of humanity in the universe from there, thus empowered with the Malkuth, the co-sovereignty with the Abba. Some, for example, like John the Baptist, as we will see, descend to earth after perfection to fulfill a designated mission. To be clear, Gilgal and spiritual rebirth, to be born again, are not the same thing. Reincarnation, in short, is when a soul in a particular body with a particular personality is physically reborn in a new, different body with a new, different personality. Spiritual rebirth, spiritual regeneration, the birth from above, which is the literal Greek translation from the Gospel of John, the birth from above. It does not mean to be born again. The Greek literally means the birth from above. Or we can also say to be born again, which is a common understanding amongst many Christians. So spiritual rebirth is a spiritual rite of passage, which is an internal, mystical, initiatic experience. the bridal chamber of the Gnostics, or the Messianic marriage banquet, which is the pre-Kabbalistic teaching of Mar Yeshua, denotes this mystical inner initiatic experience of spiritual rebirth. Spiritual regeneration is the fulfillment of doing the Master Jesus' halakha, his teachings, wholly and completely. It is what makes one an individual Baranach, part of the heavenly Baranach, the communion of saints, in the Ogdoad. Baptism, mikvah in Hebrew, a water lustration that purifies, does not grant spiritual rebirth. It marks a spiritual aspirant's sincere desire to return to God, teshuva, and to actually do the divine way and submit to the divine will. So rebirth is possible when we have a sincere desire to return to God and to do the divine way. And it's not just a belief that's so important. Jesus did not teach to believe in him. He did not say to believe in the gospel. The actual Hebrew word that rolls back is enuma. It means to have fidelity with, to do that thing. So Jesus is actually saying, do the gospel, do the proclamation, do what I say. He doesn't ask us to believe in anything. I'm not saying believing in something is wrong. We can all believe in whatever we want. But belief in something does not make you or the world a better place. Doing something will make you and the world better. Christian Testament verses about reincarnation. Let's check it out. Matthew chapter 16, 13 to 16. Now when Jesus came into the district, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." So this is a very important verse, and it's very blunt. Jesus is asking his disciples, who do the people say that I am? Because Jesus is doing these remarkable things. He's casting out demons, giving such teachings that could make people's minds expand to the point of explosion. And they're so excited about this prophet teaching them. And Jesus asks, well, who do they say I am? And he gets a plethora of answers. Some people think he's John the Baptist. Some people think he's Elijah. Others think he's Jeremiah, seen here to the left. So it's blunt. The people of Jesus' time believed in reincarnation. It's right here in front of our eyes. And I invite anybody else to give me the true interpretation of this verse, because there's no other interpretation unless you really twist it. So it's just what it is. You can't change it. It's there. And then Jesus said, "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter says, "You are the anointed one, the Son of the living God." We have to remember, of course, Matthew is a product, at least in part, of Paul's Christology and Paul's soteriology, the science of how people are saved. So at some point, Paul never went there. Paul never said that Jesus was God. But a lot of people over the course of time reading this and other things that have no understanding of Jewish customs would say that you are the Son of the living God means that you are literally God's son. That God inseminated Mary, and bada bing, there's Jesus. That's not it. Any Jewish saint that attained perfection will be given the honorary title of Son of God or Daughter of God. And that simply means that they're a Sadiq. Every one of us is a child of God. All of our souls were emanated from the Abba, the Father, Mother, God. But here, Peter is saying, you are the Messiah, you're anointed, you're Baranash, and you are the Son of the living God, you are a perfected Sadiq. That is the historical understanding, if you understand Jewish culture. But notice that if any of us grew up Christian and went to Sunday school, nobody taught us Jewish customs. Otherwise, we'd understand what Jesus was teaching so much better. Christian Testament verse about reincarnation continued. Again, we see in Matthew chapter 11, verse 15. Truly I tell you, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist. Yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets in the law prophesied until John came. And if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who is to come. Let anyone with ears listen. So here in the picture to the right, on the right side, that's John the Baptist. And on the right side of the picture, that's Elijah. Both of these men are the same soul. John is the reincarnation of Elijah. And again, we're not going to go into the full verse here. I just wanted to show where the verse came from. Just looking at the underlying portion is where it's just plain as day. Again, unless you really twist the meaning of this, you cannot escape the fact that Jesus is talking about reincarnation. Jesus says it clearly. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John came. And if you're willing to accept it, he, John, is Elijah who is to come. Plain as day. Elijah is John, and John is Elijah. But people will either, you'll also see that I went to Catholic church, I grew up in it. I sang for many, many years after I understood things differently than Catholicism. I still sing in the church because the congregation was so amazing. But you'll notice I was there year after year after year, many cycles of reading the whole Bible. I think they read the whole Bible in 5 to 6 years, both Hebrew and Christian. However, I can guarantee you that they never read this verse. Because after you read this verse, you have to talk about it, right? You have to give a sermon. And if you talk about it, but what else can you say other than the fact that it alludes to reincarnation? But Christians aren't allowed to believe in reincarnation. Unless you're a Christian in this church. Then I encourage you to use your brain, read the verse, and know that reincarnation was a basic teaching of Jesus. It's right there. In John chapter 9, verses 1 through 3, what do we see? As he walked along, he, Jesus, saw a blind man from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. So what does this mean? Again, focusing on the underlying verses. There's a man blind from birth. So as soon as he was born, he was already blind. And the disciples are asking him, Jesus, whose fault was this? Whose sin was this? This man or his parents? If this man was born blind at birth, what sins could he have done in that current incarnation to become blind? He hasn't had a chance to live yet, let alone sin, but he's blind. So when the disciples ask him, is this man blind because he has sinned? They're saying, is this man blind because he sinned in a prior incarnation? And now when he's reincarnated, he's suffering the results of his negative actions. That's what's being taught here. Plain and simple. The disciples are discussing reincarnation with their master. And Jesus answers, it wasn't even this man's fault. It wasn't the parents either. He was born blind simply so that God's works might be revealed in him. In Revelation chapter 3, verse 12, it's a great verse on reincarnation. If you conquer, I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. You will never go out of it. If you experience spiritual regeneration, I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. You will never go out of it. The temple of God is heaven, or the heavens. If you've died once, there's only one life. Where else do you have to go? You will never go out of it. You'll never go out of heaven. Doesn't that imply that some people do go out of heaven, the temple of my God? In other words, if you become spiritually realized, illuminated, a perfected Sadiq, a son or daughter of God, then you attain the heavenly realities, and you don't need to leave those heavenly realities because you no longer necessitate reincarnation to purify your soul, because you've already been fully purified, fully sanctified through the halakha of Jesus. Gospel of Thomas, Logian 8. This is one of my favorite logia from the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus says, the Barnash is like a wise fisherman who cast his net into the sea and pulled it up full of small fish. Among them, he found one good large fish. That wise fisherman threw all the small fish back down into the sea without regret, but chose to keep the large fish. Whoever can understand my mashal, my parable, let him apply it to his own life. So beautiful. It actually makes me emotional when I read this. So the Baranash is the heavenly Baranash. It's the communion of saints and the Agdawad. And he compares this communion of saints to a wise fisherman who cast the net out into creation to pull up souls. To pull up souls. It's looking, searching for, fishing for souls to include within the heavenly Barnash, the communion of saints. However, the communion of saints, the corporate Barnash, pulled up a lot of small fish. And the communion of saints found one good large fish. So the wise fisherman, which is the heavenly Baranash, threw all the small fish back down into the sea, back into the creation, to be reincarnated, but chose to keep one large fish. So the small fish are all those beings who are not yet spiritually regenerated. They're not yet illumined, they're not yet perfected. They still have room to grow into a large fish, which is a perfected saint, that is then eligible to merge or be part of the Baranash, Son of Mankind, corporate Messiah. The second Adam, the new humanity, the communion of saints. So this demonstrates both reincarnation and the fact that the heavenly Baranash's co-sovereignty is to help the evolution of humanity. So it's always, these great beings are psychically always looking to evolve souls. And if we're still small fish, we have to be sent back into the creation to be reincarnated, have a new chance, continue where we left off until we perfect ourselves. But when we become a large fish, which is a perfected being, a spiritually regenerated soul that has experienced the birth from above, then we no longer need to reincarnate. We will merge with, become married to, join the heavenly Barnabas.